How's it going, YouTube? Coming at you today with another video. And today, guys, what the brand new is the next installment of the podcast. I'm here with a couple of friends. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Nova of GoldenNovaYugioh. I focus on a lot of introductory content for teaching people how archetypes are played, so you can just jump right into it. And also teaching people about lore, because they refuse to print the books about it, so I'll just go ahead and tell everyone.
I'm NESHY. I literally only post Crystal Beast videos. If you go to my channel, I only post Crystal Beast stuff. Even if you don't play the deck yourself, I post deck profiles, spicy tips and tricks. But even if you don't play yourself, I'm sure you'll enjoy seeing how far I could take it.
I'm Jake from Yugioh Replays, and the main focus of my channel is to make competitive Yu-Gi-Oh fun. So you're gonna have this awesome intersection on my channel of competitive content and a lot of memes. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, hey, channel down below.
Hey, and I appreciate you all for being here today. This is going to be a really fun episode talking a lot about the Ishizu cards. Everyone's really worried about them moving forward, and we're going to have to see how they do in the format, but they're going to be very explosive, and there's definitely going to be a lot of really cool things that you can do with them. If you haven't already checked my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist, Dragon Shield, or Gemtech, definitely go down in the description below. Check them all out, as well as everyone's links here as far as their channels go will also be found down in the description below. I do want to mention real fast, though, if you are not already subscribed to the channel, definitely subscribe to the channel. During Christmas time, around December, we're doing a massive giveaway on the channel, one that you've never seen before. I'm hoping that you're really excited for that because I have something huge planned. It's going to be a lot of fun, and so I hope that you will all be here with me come December. Moving into our first topic today, though, what is everyone here favorite card?
That's always a rough one to answer because I have like 18 favorite archetypes at any given time. I think I've got to go with Gladiator Beast Laquari to start off.
That's based.
First big deck that I played that was actually competitive. And it's always good to see him in your opening hand. It's a nice solid start. Well, I mean, back when normal summoning Laquari was a play that actually put fear into people's hearts.
Yeah, so I have one from like that sort of era, a couple years later. Black Whirlwind, OG Black Wings, during that 2010 5Ds era. Oh my gosh, that deck is so much fun. So Black Whirlwind, love it. It's just insane.
And I have Nova's problem. Even though I only play one deck, I still have the problem picking my favorite card among them because, man, they have so many busted cards, at least in my eyes. But if I had to pick one right now, it's Bridge of the Heart. Rainbow Bridge of the Heart from the structure deck, the last revealed card, because and that's such an amazing artwork card, but it also does so much for you. Extra normal summon, diagram search, removal, cooks, cleans, does your taxes, whatever you want it to do. I really love how much it offers for the deck.
See, I think Crystal Beast is wild because they have a Rhoda for the Rhoda for the Rhoda.
Yeah.
Then
I got drolled at my regional yesterday, and I hated it. I just literally have to pass her. That's it. Don't droll me,
And
please.
see, the funniest part of that though, right, is your opponent had no clue what your deck was doing. He was probably just like, oh, he's searching, let's draw him. And then you're like, oh wait, this actually hurts. Yeah.
Oh, I have droll in my side deck. This must be good.
See, it's funny that you mentioned Droll as being a card that really does hurt because my favorite card beats Droll, and that's Psy-Frame Gear Gamma. I love Gamma so much. That card is so cool. The fact that you can summon back Driver from Grave 2 is really cool. I don't know, Gamma is just one of those cards that's just a game ending, right? When it's really good in a deck that you can utilize it, if you drop that on your own turn, like back when we still had the Chaotic Ruler and Dragon, using Gamma on your own turn, you just never lost that game. You were never losing that game.
The handshake.
Oh, it's so good. So I love Gamma.
The Gamma woe befall you. Just...
Yeah, it's so good because it's just like two bodies on the board too, right? And so even now it just turns into a free elf, which is still pretty crazy.
Even on your opponent's turn, you could use it to block an attack if they're trying to attack in time.
Yeah, and it's just it just sets up so much. And even when you are going on your own turn, you summon them both. Driver is still 2,500, and that comes up a lot. Being able to tribute summon Driver, it just happens.
Full.
Yeah, so I like Driver a lot too, even though a lot of people don't. I'm like, listen, we played 39 good cards and Driver, but Driver is still a part of the deck, all right? So I do want to talk a little bit about what people are afraid of happening here in the next month. It's not even the next month, realistically, it's like the next week or so. And that's going to be talking about a tier 0 format. So we've already had two. We've had Spiral and we had Pepe. So looking into the format that we have right now, do we all think that it's going to be a tier 0 format? Do we think that it's going to be really good but just fine? What are our thoughts initially on the Ishizu tier matchup?
So a couple of takes I've been hearing recently is that the OCG isn't a one-for-one barometer about what's supposed to happen in the TCG. Sometimes we get some very interesting changes, especially if our TCG exclusives are good, though I think we can all agree that's not exactly the case right now. My question right now is, what does the OCG have that we don't that would make Ishizu tier any different or any less powerful right now? And I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't really see many changes. I know that Keldo got limited almost immediately, and so they weren't using the Agito, and now they do because that's such a big change. But I don't really see anything because even Maxi, I don't think would be a huge deterrent as far as like using these or not using these. Because even in the OCG, they have cards like Grass Legal. So the fact that these are just being so crazy without even having to use cards like that, like I don't really see that big of a difference, and I think that they're going to just be that good.
Okay, so I have a lot of opinions on this one, so bear with me. But
Yes,
yeah,
good.
so I think that a Ishizu tier is going to be 0.5 because when we say tier 0 deck, right? You said like Pepe and Spiral, right?
Yes.
What I automatically think of is like Teledad, like 2008, like September 2008. You are not playing another deck outside of Teledad. You are not. You can normal summon Lucari. You can go for your Light Sworns. You're not beating this deck, right? And that's really the essence, I think, of what a tier 0 format is, right? And so I would summarize it as tier 0.5 because I really do think that if your deck is customized to beat this, if you have like, D shifters, DDGs, D barriers, dwellers, I mean, does it suck that you got to do that? Yeah. But it's like, I think the deck is beatable.
I'm kind of a similar opinion, but I'm also of the opinion that even if something's tier 0, that means you're playing the mirror all the time. And from what I've been hearing, Ishizu mirrors with tier is just the worst, like actually awful, because it just becomes a battle of you're both milling each other's decks, then whoever makes Dweller, and then whoever can herald the opponent's Dweller. That's pretty much whoever wins that matchup. So I think people dislike that mirror so much that it'll actually take people off of tier and want to play something more anti-meta and tech their deck out with like Dweller, Shifter, Necrovi, that kind of thing. My deck, that's kind of what I do. Why play Exosister when you can play Crystal Beast? It's crazy. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, where people dislike the mirror so much that they would prefer not to play tier in this next format, or like if they're even going to play in this format at all, maybe play something a little bit more anti-meta and try and stop tier instead.
Yeah, I definitely understand that completely. We've seen quite a few interesting matchups already with the Ishizu. Even people playing things like Infernoid, which I think is honestly a really cool meta tech right now, meta call. Just because of the fact that you have the ability to banish things in the graveyard, you have cards like Imagination, being able to mill all the Infernoids anyways by playing Ishizu cards, kind of cool. Not too sure how well it's going to do, but it's still like a really cool option. But even myself playing an Ishizu mirror, I posted about this on Twitter the other day. I had an hour 20 long game, and then I got to a chain link 11. And it's just like, it's nuts. Because you sit there and you look at like your first chain link, right? And then you have like a Guido Kelbeck, and then you have to mill another 10 cards. And so then as you're resolving this chain, you start seeing more cards hit the grave, and then you got to think about what you're going to do with those cards. And you're like, wow, this is unfortunate. So it's definitely going to be an interesting time. So I can definitely see if people want to switch off of using tier. But I would have to agree on the fact that the more matchups that you see being mirror matches, even if you go on DB right now, it's really hard to not find a deck that's not tier. And if it's not tier, it's usually flu. So it's going to be an interesting format.
Exactly. It's just going to be tiered flu. Well, I was talking to a lot of the people yesterday at my regional and who were playing tier, and they're like, after Magnificent Mavens, though, I'm picking something else. I'm not playing that mirror. That mirror is awful.
Wonder if there's a precedence for that, right? Like, was there a format where a deck was so powerful but so universally despised by the player base that it actually shifted representation at tournaments?
I know that like the other deck that I wouldn't consider tier 0 but would be that 0.5 would have been Goki, and I don't know if people necessarily like hated it enough that it did shift, but like Goki was definitely one of the other decks that come to mind when that's mentioned.
Well, so to your point, Nova, and this is like a deck that wasn't like tier 0 at all, really, but is Dragon Link a couple years ago, where we were at a point, it was very interesting, where the deck was actually really, really good, but people were so sick and tired of playing the deck that it just
Yeah.
started losing representation, right? And it's like, how boring does a deck have to be to where, the player base doesn't even want to put together like 5 people for a top 32? It's like, that says a lot, right? But it's
No
true,
kidding.
yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad there's precedence for that. Everyone spread as much Ishizu tier anti-propaganda as possible. We got to get people off. This is the only way. We got to take the ban list into our own hands.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Just bandwagon it. It's kind of like a similar idea. It reminds me of in GOAT format where people would just gentlemen's not play the library FTK. It's like no one wants to play that. We're just here to play GOAT. We're just here to play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Might be like a similar thing, that but of course there's always going to be those couple people that, want to play the best deck and win, which is perfectly fine. It's not against the rules or anything, but it is like it does suck kind of for everyone else.
That is true. That is true. A good old prisoner's dilemma of a format we've got going on here.
Exactly.
Hopefully we get some kind of hit on the tier deck because we just need change in the format. This is just not going to be very fun. Because I've heard a lot of people saying like even Sprite is just not even going to be that great to play right now. Like you can play as like a small engine and tier, but it's just not by itself even able to be played with Ishizu in the format.
And there's unfortunately just one person out there that's like, yes, finally support for my Exchange of Spirit FTK deck. Finally!
Have you read the
That poor
Gravekeeper
lad.
Trap?
it's wild. It's so wild that is not like the card out of that set. Nope, more milling.
Somebody dropped that on me and they milled Exchange of Spirit and I was like, huh? I was like, what? That's Dweller? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, that's a problem. Like, this is unfortunate.
That's just the better player, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's definitely interesting. Talking more so about like the Ishizu cards, do you feel like they're gonna warrant that emergency ban list? I know that we kind of talked about this a little bit, but like more so, do we realistically think it's going to happen?
I think no. I think there's a very strict line between complaining and like actually like there's a problem, right? Because it's like no matter what format you give us, we as Yu-Gi-Oh players are like very good at complaining. Like we are pros, okay? Like oh my gosh, whatever the meta is, name the top deck and we'll make memes about it. We'll complain about it. We'll make Twitter threads about it. You have Yu-Gi-Oh anonymous tweets about it, right? You'll have everything about it, right? And you have to really be like sort of objective, like Konami hopefully should be, and say, is this actually like deteriorating the game, right? And I think it's going to be annoying, and obviously you'll probably hear me, say this a couple times throughout today's podcast, but I think people. I know this sounds crazy right now. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But I think people are overhyping Ishizu stuff a little bit too much, and I think there's going to be very clear ways to deal with it. So it's like, are we going to get emergency ban lists? I don't think so. See, now that I say it, now they're gonna do it, right? But like that's kind of how it goes. But
Good, just say it more. Say it more.
Yeah. I think they're really hesitant on doing an emergency ban list. They haven't done one since Pepe, right? So
Yeah, it's been a
I
while.
feel
to
like
my
at this
knowledge.
point they know what they're doing. They're not going to emergency ban it. They're just going to let the Ishizu cards sell Mama.
This set's definitely interesting, and the fact that we're getting these cards right now, a lot of people are trying to figure out other ways to use them outside of like tier. I don't know if we'd get like an emergency ban list per se, but like at the same point, I feel like it almost will warrant one just because of the fact that, okay, if we look back at what they did to Ulti Kanahawk and why they did it, right? Like, they didn't say why they did it, but we know why they did it, right? Like, Ritual Beast took like 45 minutes to do anything. So like, now that we have a deck that strictly takes 45-minute game ones, like, I could see them doing something about it just because of the fact that time rules alone are going to suck.
That's a good point.
I do hope that they do that. I would argue that Dragon Link was already kind of pushing the boundaries of time limits as of now, and they didn't really do anything against that, as far as I know, aside from the amazing shooting riser limit. But that deck has so many like different combo lines I've had to consider moment to moment. That I know I was stuck having to hit time stuff because my opponent was playing such a long, complicated deck that I don't know if they're gonna actually care about that. I hope they do. That'd be great. But like realistically, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I've been kind of theorying with a lot of people like, okay, what happens if they follow the OCG and they immediately like limit Keldo, or if they like ban a name, which I don't know if they'd ever go after a name. They might, because they did in the OCG, but then they just printed out a new name and a new field spell, which I was kind of like, what? You know, like what just happened? They limited Reno, they limited Havness, and they're like, here's this better Havness, and then here's another field spell. Like I don't get that. So I guess we'll have to see what happens, because we already know those cards are on their way, right? So like we're just gonna get more cards for the deck. So they got to do something. So I mean, whether it's now or later, like we either have to play this format until the new year, because like the ban list hypothetically shouldn't be out until like January, or we just kind of like get something to deal with what we're dealing with now.
And kick Kalos, I guess. That's the only solution.
That'd be like death. You could limit it. That'd be rough.
Yeah, that's true.
That'd be like one of the limits in a long time that I would say that like, ouch. Because like you could still play, but like if it gets like Biscued out of your graveyard or whatnot, like what have you, like that sucks.
Like, what one hit could you make to tier that would actually make the Ishizu cards more fair, you know?
Probably banning or limiting Havness, at least for now.
Hmm.
Because Havness just gets so much value right now. Like it's
Yeah.
so good. Because if you, I milled the other day, it was a Havness. I milled a Guido, Shiren, and Kelbeck, and I was like, huh. Like, I was starting my opponent like, I'm playing the game right now, right?
Oh no!
Oh,
Don't
this
turn
is
zero
your turn.
Havness me. You're
Oh.
so sexy. Haha.
I think you're mistaken. This is my turn.
This is our turn.
I mean, something so funny about these cards, right? Because I've been watching a bit more of the mirrors because I want to be comfortable there, right? Is that when, and this totally makes sense, but I think it's hilarious, right? Is that when a player will get ahead in the mirror, they'll intentionally not use the two millers, the Ajito and Kelbeck, right? They won't even use them because it's like, I don't even want to give you a chance to come back, right? And I think the fact that I don't even want to use my cards because I can just kind of like put my foot on your neck here, like, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, man, you know?
Just from playing a lot of mirror matches, you really have to make sure that you know when you're using those cards, though. So I'm actually about to do a review of like my 45-minute game that I just had, because of the fact that like there's so many interactions in there that there's a lot of points where if I was already ahead, or like I wouldn't even use my mill cards unless I knew for a fact that I had Keldo in the graveyard, because I want to make sure that my opponent also can't play. And then there's also a lot of moments where like if you mill like 2 tier names and your opponent has a Keldo, you only use 1 tier name. And it's usually like you save Merly for the last, because if your other 2 get crowed out of your graveyard to return to your deck, then you can still make like the sprint and then send Merly, and you can set up for later. So there's a lot of technical play you got to watch for in the matchup.
No, that's a good point. I think another thing I was thinking of was, but we're talking about playing Ausa. Like there's an Ausa buyout, or there's going to be, you know, you take an Ishizu piece. But honestly, help me out here. I don't have the bigger picture. What is that even doing? Like if you Ausa take an Ishizu piece, because it's just going back to their graveyard, right?
Yeah, so like that card's really good, and that's something that I originally, as soon as I started the format, I was like, all right, we need this, because not only can Asa reborn one of the level 4s, which just means easy dweller. It's also just really good for Link Climb as well. You can also use it to like force out Keldos and whatnot too. So like if there's a Keldo in your opponent's graveyard, you can go, all right, I'm going to summon your Keldo to my board so that I can mill freely, and then you don't have a Keldo to use in your graveyard. Which is also just a really nice one to do, because you can like mill 8 at that point and just not let your opponent mill, and then you can just play the game without your opponent being able to. And then you can link it off when you have a Mudora or a Keldo in your graveyard, and then spin it back to their deck immediately. So,
yeah, just like going off that point though, like if you can take out your opponent's Keldo, like the Keldo and the Mudora resources in your graveyard, they are so huge, right? Because if I have those and my opponent doesn't, my opponent is like just not playing. Like not at all, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, because each one is not like Abysto where you're only hitting 1, you're hitting 3. And that really is super huge. And something I've noticed in the mirror match is like people will be focusing super like diligently on the Mudora and Keldo interactions, and I think they're doing so like rightfully, right? Because I think it's very important.
yes, those cards are the bread and butter of the deck right now. They're very good. And it's something where I don't know if it's like too good, but like at the same point, like they are really strong, because the second that you get a Keldo or a Mudora in the graveyard, you just know that you're able to play the game with your opponent. Like you said, if you don't have those, you just kind of lose, unfortunately.
You heard it here first, folks. Banisher of the Radiance buyout. Just normal summon it. Don't worry about anything. It's fine. We're good.
True. I also saw people talking a bit about playing Kaiku, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, that's a interesting one to play, especially back when like it was bigger on Bestials. Just because you could just like normal summon it and then you didn't have to worry about anything, and then end of your combo you could just overlay for Dweller. So I always thought that was really cool. I was out here normal summoning Denko though.
Yeah.
I thought that was really base.
Energy.
My opponent had 3 set cards. It was like Therians, Cross, Smashers, and Starter, and I was like normal summon Denko, and they're like, wow.
Wow.
I was like, I don't need a normal summon. Here you go.
Oh, you want to play Thunders, huh? I'll show you a Thunder.
I swear, like literally everyone forgets about Denko. Like every single year, everyone's gonna forget about Denko. Denko comes back and like, oh yeah.
Because my opponent had a couple set cards, and I was playing against a control matchup, and I just assumed one of them was a Floodgate, and I was like, standby phase? I was like, anything? And he's like, no. I was like, okay, main phase? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. It's Denko? And like, he already saw it game 1, or not game 1, game 2, we were in game 3, and I was like, sorry, friend, you know? Like, here you go.
That's just the way it is.
So the next little thing that I want to talk about here is going to be talking a little bit about Madolche, and we'll kind of slide this into some rogue topics too. So I've actually heard a lot of talk about Madolche over the last format or so. I actually like this a lot too. Just it has a lot of synergy, which I think is really cool. With this as well, you can go ahead and use cards like the Exceed that shuffle cards back from the graveyard, which I think is really cool against like the Ishizu matchup as well. What do we think about this deck and how it could perform this format? Because I feel like it's always been a sleeper, but especially with like graveyard control, I think it's actually pretty nice.
I think Madolche is so cool with its interactions against Ishizu. The biggest problem I would say with Madolche is like in that weird scenario where say like if the 30%, 40% of the meta is not actually Ishizu tier, how are you going to play against that? Because I think like sort of fundamentally from what I've seen, the Madolche core and like the power level is relatively lower, but like you'd be playing it to sort of get that like I don't want to say cheese because it's like it's not like you're like really cheesing your opponent, but it just has a favorable matchup against tier Jizu. So I would just if I was playing that deck, I would be super worried about not having my opponent beat tier Jizu and then I have to actually like play a real game of Yu-Gi-Oh, you know? Like that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's another shifter deck, right? And so you can play a lot of Floodgate, Shifter, Fenrir, like all these different cards. I think that it just has a lot of potential in this format. It's really cheap right now. That's something for people to at least consider looking at.
And the Vernisylphs are just out of this world strong. It's wild. They just gave every Earth deck like, yes, you can have 4 Monster Reborns and a way to set up your graveyard. And if you want to be a little cheesy, we have a big negate boss monster for you. Just have it. It steals cards for free.
Yeah, the Vernisylphs are actually insane. Those cards are really nice.
I mean, on a quick little side note, I mean, I've been seeing some people try to run Necharias with those guys. Like, that deck has some potential. I mean, the trap to send insert. I mean, that's not bad, you know.
It's a little real.
Yeah,
Can't believe it.
It's cool, you know. The Earth decks are getting all the love right now, so it's interesting. They also got like the Searcher too. It's like the Asa Searcher. So there's quite a few things that the Earth archetype's getting. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Talking a little bit more about some rogue options, though, I added in Crystal Beast here. I understand, Neshi, that you did something with Crystal Beast over the weekend.
Yeah, so I actually took Crystal Beast to a 3rd place finish at my regional last night, and that it's cool because it's really special to me because this is my very first top 2, like regional top, because I literally only play Crystal Beast, and there is finally at the point where, you know, they're able to make it into that top spot. It's pretty awesome to see how many tools Crystal Beast have to beat the meta. I hoped I played against Tyr yesterday all day. When you know, you have searchable Necro Valley, your maining Shifter, and Pegasus is a 1-card Dweller. Salvation searches for both Pegasus and Necro Valley. It's just hard to see how Crystal Beast could lose to Tearlament sometimes, honestly. You know, I played against 3 Tyr, and I 2-0'd all 3 of them. Hardest matchup was Sprite, 100%. Sprite Runic, the toughest matchup for Crystal Beast because, you know, they the Necro Valley, that kind of thing. And I'm like, no, my win condition. It's it's cool to see how many things Crystal Beast can do, even with their engine, against Rogue. So it's like not an anti-meta strategy that loses to other Rogue. Because, Heart is just removal for some reason. Awakening in the battle phase goes for crazy OTKs. So it's actually not a bad pick. And some of the judges there were like, yeah, dude, that's Conclave control. That's a real deck. And I'm like, it's just cool to see my baby growing up,
You've been validated,
Exactly, yeah.
It's
They didn't
crazy
even know
with,
who I was. They just knew that
Really?
Conclave control was a
Wow.
real thing. So that was honestly really sweet. to
Your
me.
legacy lives on. No, but
Exactly, yeah.
No, I thought it was so funny how what was the new the Crystal Beast trap that like banished from graveyard and gets you like the turtle and the other guy?
Yeah, Salvation.
Salvation, yeah, Salvation. I thought that was so hilarious when Tears stole that from you guys. They're like, I
think it's
we need
based.
that for us now,
It's kind of poetic because my very last round, round 7, my opponent normal summon Rhino Heart, and I just breathed a sigh of relief. I'm like, we're gonna make it. Just a tear to end the day. Love to see it. But the very last game, it was really quick. It was like a 15-minute match. So he just kind of scooped it up on the last one because he bricked on Salvation of all things. How poetic! He was playing the Salvation and he bricked on it.
No blade
thought that
forged
was
of
sweet.
Crystal Beast can harm the Neshi.
Exactly. I think it's really cool though that Tyr is playing it. Honestly, I'm not offended that they're playing that engine. They're just realizing how crazy it is. Why not just mill it, or just this has some really good targets. The Solik to search, or the new spell that they got to also search a card. So they have 3 good targets for goods, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. I was checking it out for a little while to see if I wanted to try out the Salvation engine. I did it for like a local too. I thought it was kind of cool being able to search any field spell. Of course, Mystic Mind is still in the game, so still a really nice target. So Crystal Beast is definitely one of those decks that I thought was really based. I love GX. If you look at my avatar, it's also wearing a Slifer Blazer, so I love that series. It's great.
All right.
Huge fan. So definitely seeing like Jesse Anderson and whatnot, definitely a really cool character. I was always really there for like the dual spirits and like having the carbuncle around. Like it was super cool. I always found it funny too back in like old Crystal Beast how we're always like, all right, so how do we summon carbuncle? Like that's gotta be the way that we do this. So I always like that deck a lot. But so talking more so too about like a different rogue option that I think is going to be really good this format that a lot of people always, I feel like they think is really good, but they don't ever give it credit, is Marincess. And I think that deck is going to be crazy this format.
I mean, I'm already on board with an archetype that just has hand traps that you can play. Like, that's already huge.
Yeah, especially, have you known like the new interaction with like the World Sea Dragon?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, that is so stupid.
I
That
ran
came with
into
this
that.
set, right?
I ran into that on rated on my climb to high rate, bro. I read that. He told me the interaction. Like, you know what it seemed like? It seemed like he had it like copy pasted because like people probably didn't like believe him, so he had to like keep copy pasting. He's like, I was like, oh man, I believe you.
It sounds like someone misinterpreted the rules. Like someone just came in, they got their structure deck, and it's like, yes, I can't special summon. No, it returns. No, read the card, and then you lose.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and the fact that World Sea Dragon's only like $6 right now is just like such a disservice to the card. Like it's so good, and I remember back when it came out, and I was like, wait, does that say 1+? And they're like, yeah. I was like, can you just tag this off of like an access code? And they're like, yes. I was like, this card's nuts. And so then we found the interaction with Marincess. And like, just in general, Marincess has so many slots for like utility cards. I just think that's just such a good deck. Like, it really is. So I think that's one of those things that will end up being like really meta, and not like meta, but like still a meta contender.
The Atlantis is one of those cards where everyone can see it being broken and busted. We just couldn't see the deck it was busted.
Yeah. No, see, like, when I first read that card, I literally thought it was just going to be for, like, Appaloozas that were down bad on, like, 800 attack, right?
Yeah.
You swap it out for the 250, right? Like, but, no, I mean, the interaction is so crazy. And, yeah.
So a little bit from this too, we see a lot of people that are like, I really want to play a different deck. I don't want to play Ishizu Tear. I want to look at these rogue options. I want to play something different that's not that, And from that, I feel like we get a lot of, I'm going to take a break from Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like
Okay, one second. Before we go to this topic, do you mind if I share my rogue deck? Because I'm telling you, man, I got the goo. Okay.
Bro, let's hear it.
People are sleeping Okay, so I've been playing for context, right? I've been playing this deck for like the last month, and I have been so invested in it. It's a rogue deck, Labyrinth.
Yes.
People are discrediting this deck so much. So a couple of things here, right? So first of all, you know, NESHY knows this very well. If you're playing a rogue deck, no one knows what you're doing. They have no game plan against you. They're just kind of like winning it, right? Like, oh, you know, I should beat you because my deck has a higher power level, which may or may not be the case, right? Labyrinth is really crazy because one, we don't care about our graveyard, so D-Shifter is like, you can totally do it if you want to, right? You have this very wide sort of library of normal traps in the game that are just really, really good. You know, there's even normal traps to help you win in time, right? So for example, for normal traps though, like for this deck, you can play like Fiend's Griefing, right? Because oh, you got the guy in the graveyard, we'll just put it back, you know. It's like, and then what's also really cool is if you want to go first, there's so many options there too, right? Because you can do DDG, D-Bear, literally whatever you got to do. Because like right now, you know, when we're dealing with like sprites and tiers, I mean, I have in my side like deck dev and D-Bear, right? And what's so crazy about Labyrinth is that when you go first, and people don't know this yet, there's this combo where you can activate a trap, a normal trap, out of your deck. You activate a normal trap out of your deck. The mini combo, just really quickly, is you go, Lady Labyrinth, chain welcome. No, so you go welcome, chainlink 1, chainlink 2, Lady sets the trap, welcome goes Ariana search Ku Klok, discard, and you can activate like whatever trap you wanted just right there. And bro, I'm telling you, this deck, if you need a new deck and you're trying to like, I don't know, if you think this like format's impossible, you know, give it a chance. And the one other sort of interesting tech that we're considering doing right now, and this actually applies to like everyone right now, but we're considering doing, and it's kind of like the Nico like cat thing, but it's like I think it's a little better.
Yes. Yeah.
Is no, so it's not Nico cat. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but
Oh, man.
it's running 2 Mudora and 2 Keldo in the main, to where if we're just milling them out, we can like kind of like mess up our opponent and catch them off guard. So, you know, just some ideas here.
Interesting. Throw it in, and if they run into it, then it's like, well, it sucks to suck.
Yeah, the cards are really interesting. They're just free level 4s too if you get them in your hand. So like again, free dwellers, still really nice. So I do want to touch on this topic though, talking a bit more about like when we're going to be taking breaks from Yu-Gi-Oh, people who are feeling burnout, which is a very real thing, and that's why I like to have conversations about it, because people are definitely going to get to a point in the game where they're like, listen, this format isn't for me. When we talk about like burnout, have any of you ever felt burnout? How did you deal with burnout? And then if it's just taking a break from the game, I think that it's fine. But I also feel like if you look at a format before it happens and you're just going to take a break from the format, I feel like you should probably at least wait for the first like week or two and just really be able to play the format before you make that decision. Because I feel like we have a lot of moments in Yu-Gi-Oh where people are like, oh, this format looks horrendous. But how many times have we said that? Like, we've said that so many times. People when Link Summoning came out, they were like, this is the worst game ever. I'm not playing this game anymore. This is terrible. And then, guess what? Link Summoning is one of the best things that ever happened in the game. It's super fun, at least in my opinion. It's super cool. It's just one of those things that added so much more to the game. Every single deck that wants to be good gets a Link 1. It's like, wow, that's a crazy deck now. But I just want to hear all your takes about this, because I feel like it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, no, I feel very passionate about this, right? So first of all, like, it's really what you're saying, right? It's like when it comes to burning out because you think, oh, the format is doomed, or like you can't find a deck that you really enjoy. I mean, there's so many decks in this game, right? And it's like, if you're not trying a lot of these decks, how are you gonna know if you like it or not, right? If you haven't tried Crystal Beast, if you haven't tried Labyrinth, if you haven't tried any of these other like decks, if you haven't given them a shot, I mean, how do you know you don't like it, right? You have to at least give it a chance, right? And then I guess going back to the main topic of burnout in general, like, have I? Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the primary reasons for me is not because I don't like this game. I honestly love this game. And if you don't, I mean, I understand, right? But it's like, for me, the reason why I would burn out, and I have burned out in the past, and, you know, maybe I burn out in the future, is because, like, my real life, like, just demands so much more time and, like, effort from you, right? Because when we really think about it, and I think we assess accurately, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a lay back in your chair game, turn the lights off, and like, you know, like click buttons, right? I mean, you can play it like that, you know, I understand. But you know, I think it's more like, you know, turn the lights on, you know, be focused, drink some coffee, and like let's play. It's like strategy, right? It's like sort of like chess, you know, to whatever degree, right? And you know, I think that really requires a lot of attention. And if your life is like very busy, you just have a lot of obligations or responsibilities, you know, it might not be the right time to play for you. So, you know, I totally understand.
Mm. I want to echo that because I do agree there are a lot of decks that people would enjoy if they actually just try it themselves. I feel like a lot of the time people want to take a break because they feel like their favorite deck isn't going to be able to compete against what's coming out. It's like, man, power creep has gotten too strong. It's at the point now where I can't play my favorite strategy, or even like my three favorite strategies are all just not there. And then it takes a piece of support for their favorite deck to bring them back in, and they're like, okay, I might give it another shot, that kind of thing. But I think you can, instead of waiting on support for your favorite deck, try something else that you might like. If you like trap decks, Labyrinth is like the trap deck to play right now. And if you like combo decks, Dragon Link is an option for you too. And a lot of people aren't seeing those kinds of options sometimes when they see these toxic cards come out, and they're like, oh well, you know what, looks like I'm taking a break from Yu-Gi-Oh. And you know what, sometimes that could be the case. And I talk about choosing different decks and I just play the same deck, whatever, but I'm a weird hybrid of person where I just like play. My job is to play Crystal Beast against the machine. I want to play it despite how bad the format is. That's just me. That's not everyone. Where I think 9 times out of 10 you should just play a deck where it actually does have a favorable matchup against the meta. But sometimes maybe it's time to reevaluate and like see if you're getting burnt out on Yu-Gi-Oh. I've taken like month-long breaks from the game and then I come back better than ever. Right? I think it's healthy sometimes because we get so invested in this game. I think burnout is just inevitable from time to time. So I think taking a break from Yu-Gi-Oh could be healthy, but it also could just be like, try out a different deck, try something new. Maybe you're burnt out on what you're playing, and maybe another deck will give you a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and I'm gonna piggyback off of what Neshi's saying, because as someone who's ran a lot of events in the past, I've noticed that Yu-Gi-Oh has this unique player-based subset where there's of course the competitive players who will try to win with whatever they feel is best, and then you have a lot of casual players who are focused on archetypes or just general themes that they are really really focused on. And I think that's unique across different card games. Like if you look at Pokemon, generally, if your specific Pokemon that you like isn't meta, you don't super care about that one not being good because you'll get a new one next set. Magic the Gathering is more about certain play types or really broad tribes instead of like Light Sworns or heaven forbid you're playing Cloudians. So whenever you see a format that is so toxically controlling that your favorite deck doesn't get to play, it's hard to look outside of that and be all like, well, if I just took this concept that this deck does and played a more recent one that does that really well, it's hard for them to look outside of that because they're so invested. Like, I've been playing Six Samurais for 4 years. You're expecting me to pick up Goki? What do you, this warrior spam deck that does better in this environment? How dare you suggest that to me? Those are masked wrestlers, not samurai. But I think it's cool to like, I do agree to, if that's what you feel like, if your deck is just like not in there, step away, have fun. There are other hobbies, round out your stuff. And then when you get to come back to Yu-Gi-Oh, if something like sparks your interest, now you have like 6 months to a year of new stuff that you get to learn about. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
And also, let me point this because that's a good point. And you know, something that comes to my mind is like the first sort of reaction I think a lot of people have is, but where do I look? Where do I find it? Right? Like who's gonna show me? Right? Let me tell you, man. Like I'm pretty sure that like I could be wrong, but I think there's a Discord for like every single archetype, right? Because like Neshi's running the Crystal Beast one, if I'm not mistaken, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, I think it's really funny because one time one of my friends was like, "Bro, aren't you worried that like your goo's gonna get leaked?" And I'm like, "Bro, I am giving this goo away. Like,
Yeah.
please, please play this deck." I have this one high rated buddy who's playing Labyrinth, and he was like the inspiration to get me into it. And we always joke around how if someone were to play my list, they could have this really amazing title of being the third Labyrinth player. So it's like, we just want to bring more people in, man.
Yeah, I definitely understand the whole thing with burnout, and I was just gonna give my own piece on this now too. So a lot of people know that I'm the striker guy. Like I play Sky Striker. That's the deck that I'm on. The deck is kind of what we call unplayable at the moment. Bestials in the format, having Ishizu to spin back all your spells before they can resolve. Like, there's a lot of problems with playing Striker at the moment. And so that's one thing too, where even I had to branch out and find a different deck, like Tearlament, right? But so like even my decks, like in order from when I started, like even trying to play even semi-competitively, right, was like Fire King Cosmo, Guru, playing more so even Marincess for a little while. I was on Striker, Tearlament. Like there's so many different decks. I played Dragon for a while. And so like really being able to broaden which decks you play, I feel like makes the game a lot more fun. Just because not only are they good at different times, right? And so you can play something that is definitely a little bit different. It's something for me that really keeps the game fresh. And I don't really want to just play one deck the whole time, but like there are a lot of times where I will come back to just playing Striker. And that's because you always find a deck that you're really going to like playing. There's nothing wrong with that. I took 10 months away from the game. Engage went back to 1. The first tournament that I went to, I went undefeated with Engage at 1. And it's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when you have a favorite deck and you know how to play that deck, it doesn't matter what the format's like, as long as it's playable, it's playable. And I remember that same tournament, I was like, yeah, Bell against Tri-Brigade, that card sucks. And I didn't realize at the time that you could Bell Revolt, because I didn't really necessarily care too much about like what the decks were doing. I was just like, I know what my cards do, and I know how to get there on my own win con. So it's one of those things where you can definitely feel comfortable with the deck and play the deck all the time, but I definitely heavily recommend that if you are feeling like the game is getting to a point where it might be a little bit unplayable, figure out what the definition of unplayable is. Because is it unplayable for your deck, or is it just unplayable in general? You can only play one deck and you don't want to play in a tier 0 format. Because there's two very different things. And again, playing and not playing is definitely fine. Like if you want to take a step away from the game for a little while, definitely go ahead and do so. I think that's fair. I think that's fun to go ahead and do other things and come back to Yu-Gi-Oh with a fresh set of eyes. Definitely great. But when you say that the game is unplayable, try to figure out what you mean by unplayable.
And then just adding on to that really quickly, it's like I think regardless of what deck you're playing, it would benefit you. And in some cases, like if you're playing roguelike, it is essential to be aware of what's going on in the room, right? Because the fact that you can come back and win like a Striker, like you can win a tournament with Striker, they're just like off the rip without even like, I don't know how much you know at the time of what was going on, or how much you like, and how much you like prepped your deck to sort of deal with it, which I would guess not much. Which is, trust me, man, that's awesome, right?
I had Hercules base still in my deck, so yeah, no.
Okay. But yeah, no, I mean, like, if you are prepared for what's going to be in the room, I mean, I really do believe, I'm kind of, you can tell I'm kind of optimistic, right? But I think a lot of decks have chances that people traditionally will underestimate.
Any closing thoughts for the day?
Yeah, no, this is a big narrative that I sort of believe right now in the game, is that I think right now more than ever you're going to hear a lot of pessimism. You're gonna hear a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh's over. You know, it's like these types of sentiments that keep sort of coming back. And you know, I think sometimes, like, you know, Teldad format, I think these sentiments are very justified. And frankly, regardless of if they're justified, I understand why people feel this way, and I feel that, right? But I think for this format, you know, please try to stay optimistic. I think, you know, looking back in a month, I think we're actually gonna think this is not that bad of a format. I think there's gonna be so many tools if you're playing a rogue deck to handle them, and you know, definitely give it a try. So yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I like to stay optimistic as well. You know, there's always something you can do to combat the meta.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. This is an issue that I think we see outside of Yu-Gi-Oh too, where we as players have all the tools we could ever want to experiment and test and figure things out, but unfortunately not everyone has like the drive in them to sit down and actually grind that out to figure it out. And then they just say like, oh, well, if I couldn't figure it out, then the entire format must be messed up. And like you said, sometimes Teledads just happen and we have to deal with them. But sometimes there are formats like, I don't know, Necros, where that was incredibly oppressive, but people found really interesting outs that made that format maybe not fun, but it was very skill testing. So I think we might be on the verge of something like that again, and I am excited to see what the top minds will brew.
See, in Necros format, we had Yosenju, Triple Vanny's Emptiness, Macro D Fissure. It was a great day.
Oh, okay, yeah. The Osenju players coming in here saying, "Oh, that was a big deal. Special summoning. I don't know what are you talking about. I'm playing pre-flu."
Nice Jin lock you got there, Kama
Oh.
one.
What?
Do you guys remember I swear this was the case. I don't know. Maybe my memory is bad, but weren't there like Necros mirrors where like players just wouldn't play for some reason?
Yep.
Do you guys remember this?
Yep.
I forgot why, but I just remember it like being a thing, you know.
Because like you could like OTK with Necros out of nowhere, and everyone was worried about having Valkyries in hand. So if you committed anything, you opened yourself up to Trish, punish, auto die. So you just wouldn't do anything for several turns. There's like they wrote that out, right? One of the tournament reports is just like turn A drew a card and passed. Player B drew a card, looked at their hand, then passed. It's wild coverage.
Yeah.
Drew a card, set a card, passed.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just the wave, though. You gotta just read that on your opponent's hand and be like, yeah, they probably have a Valk right now. Like, if I go for it, I just lose. And then if they go, then I lose, you know? So it's nice. Sometimes you just have the heads-up play to be able to do something like that. Well, thank you all for joining me today. It's been a great discussion. It's going to be another one in the books. I really do like doing podcasts. I think that it really does open up really unique discussion, and especially with the format like this where everyone's a little bit on edge with the Ishizu cards coming out and really deciding whether or not they want to stay and play or they want to go. Just because of the way that the format is, I think that it's important to have these types of talks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I love being on these podcasts, and thank you for inviting these wonderful guests that know a lot more about Yu-Gi-Oh than I do. So I can just say a funny thing, and they can provide the actual commentary.
Oh, 100%.
No, I obviously thank you guys so much for coming through, and thank you for hosting this. I really appreciate it.
I agree. Yeah, it's awesome that we get to come together and actually talk to each other in like a face-to-face kind of environment, and then just share our thoughts. And whoever got something out of this, I hope you enjoyed it, and stick around for the next one.
Absolutely. Everyone have a great night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.